If you're preparing for interviews the same way candidates did 3 years ago, you may be preparing for the wrong interview. For a long time, the path was straightforward. Learn to code, practice algorithms, pass the interview, get the job. And while those skills are still important, the way products are built today has changed dramatically. AI can generate code, explain unfamiliar technologies, and accelerate development in ways that weren't possible just a few years ago. As a result, companies are starting to focus on a different question, not just whether a candidate can write code, but whether they can build products that solve real problems. Can they understand requirements? Can they work across the stack? Can they make sound technical decisions? Can they leverage AI effectively without becoming dependent on it? The opportunities are still there, but the skills being measured are changing. And in this video, we'll break down exactly what those skills are, how modern interviews are evolving, and a practical 90-day roadmap for becoming a product engineer. One of the most interesting changes happening in hiring right now is that interviews are starting to look more like actual work. For years, candidates were primarily evaluated through algorithm questions and coding exercises. And while those skills still matter, many companies are increasingly interested in something else. How do you solve problems when you're working inside a real application? Can you navigate an unfamiliar codebase? Can you build a feature from a set of requirements? Can you debug an issue that doesn't have an obvious answer? Can you review AI-generated code and determine whether it's actually correct? These are the kinds of challenges engineers face every day on the job. And as AI becomes more capable, companies care less about whether you can type code from memory and more about whether you can make good engineering decisions. Can you identify trade-offs? Can you communicate your reasoning? Can you design a solution that is maintainable, scalable, and easy for others to understand? The goal isn't just to write code. The goal is to build products that solve real problems. That's why we're seeing growing interest in full-stack assessments, project-based interviews, system design discussions, and practical engineering exercises. Because ultimately, the best predictor of future performance is often seeing how someone approaches real work. Let's take a look at what this type of interview preparation actually looks like. Here, we're browsing a library of practical engineering challenges covering front-end, back-end, and full-stack development. Each problem starts with a real set of requirements, similar to what you might receive during an interview or on a product team. Before writing any code, you can review the existing implementation, explore the project structure, and understand how the application works. From there, you jump directly into the IDE and begin building the solution, just as you would in a modern engineering environment. So how do you actually prepare for these modern interviews? The traditional answer would be to spend years learning every framework, every language, and every tool. But that's not how most engineers work today. Modern product engineers rely on strong fundamentals and AI-assisted development. Once you understand how front-end applications work, how APIs communicate, how databases store information, and how systems fit together, those concepts transfer across almost every technology stack. That's where Develow comes in. Develow combines practical full-stack interview challenges with an AI assistant directly inside the development environment. You can explore real applications, understand existing code bases, implement features, debug issues, and get help when you're stuck. The goal isn't to memorize React, Go, Python, or any specific framework. The goal is to understand the underlying concepts that power all of them. Because once you have those fundamentals, AI can help you move between technologies much faster than ever before. That's why this roadmap focuses on becoming interview-ready in 90 days, not by learning everything, but by learning the fundamentals that modern companies evaluate and using AI to accelerate the rest. That's what product engineering looks like in 2026. One of the biggest mistakes candidates make is confusing knowledge with skill. Knowing what React is and building a React feature are two completely different things. Knowing what a database is and designing a database are two different skills. Knowing what an API is and implementing an API are two different skills. Modern interviews are increasingly focused on application rather than memorization. Can you understand a requirement? Can you navigate an unfamiliar code base? Can you implement a feature? Can you debug an issue? Can you review AI-generated code and determine whether it's correct? These are the types of challenges that appear again and again because they're closely related to real engineering work. That's why Develow focuses on practical challenges instead of trivia. The goal isn't to memorize technologies. The goal is to develop the ability to solve problems regardless of which technology stack you're working in. One of the biggest misconceptions about AI is that it eliminates the need to learn engineering fundamentals. In reality, the opposite is true. The engineers getting the most value from AI are usually the ones with the strongest foundations. Why? Because AI is incredibly good at implementation. It can generate code, explain frameworks, write tests, and help you move faster. But it still relies on you to provide direction. You need to understand the problem. You need to validate the solution. You need to recognize when something is wrong. That's why the goal isn't to memorize every framework. The goal is to understand the underlying concepts that power modern applications. Once you understand front-end development, back-end systems, databases, APIs, and debugging, AI becomes a force multiplier. You can move between React, Next.js, Node.js, Go, Python, and other stacks much faster because you're applying the same concepts in different environments. That's exactly the mindset modern companies are looking for. Not engineers who compete with AI, engineers who know how to work effectively alongside it. When you combine all of these pieces together, a different type of candidate starts to emerge. Not someone who memorized every framework, not someone who relies entirely on AI, but someone who understands how products are built. They can work across the stack. They can navigate unfamiliar code. They can build features. They can debug issues. They can communicate their decisions. And they know how to leverage AI to move faster without sacrificing quality. That's what many modern companies are increasingly looking for. Not specialists who only know a single framework. Not candidates who memorize interview questions. But engineers who can take ownership of problems and deliver solutions. Those are the skills we're building throughout this roadmap. And they're the same skills that show up again and again in modern interviews. Throughout this video, we've talked about how interviews are changing. They're becoming more practical, more focused on real engineering work, and more focused on how candidates use AI effectively. That's exactly why Develow exists. Everything is built around modern product engineering interviews. You can browse a growing library of front-end, back-end, full-stack, and system design challenges. Use AI-powered search to find problems by skill, technology, or interview focus area. Follow curated problem sets designed to build specific fundamentals step by step, and solve everything inside a full-stack development environment that feels familiar to anyone who has used VS Code or Cursor. You can explore existing codebases, implement features, debug issues, review AI-generated code, and practice the same workflows that show up in modern interviews. The goal isn't to memorize answers. The goal is to develop the skills that transfer across every stack, every framework, and every engineering team. Strong fundamentals, practical experience, and AI-assisted development. That's the foundation of modern product engineering. And that's what Develow is designed to help you build.